I'm going to just come up forward first. I'll be standing up and sitting on a lot. I've got a very sore back, so I have to keep moving around. First of all, I want to thank you for coming. We had a session last night. We're having another one today. I want to tell you from the outset that what we're proposing is nothing new in the province. There are currently for 2018, there are just over 50 levies being used across the province, and some of them very close to us. The Arm of Kelsey has special levies on their tax roll equal to about $600 per parcel. The city of Flin Flon has also levies in, and they're also at $600. And so when we were looking at what we could do and how to move forward, when we first introduced it to you in the spring, we couldn't have done it more wrong if we tried. We didn't educate you, we didn't explain to you, we just laid it out there, and everybody was just, they were gobsmacked, like, what? So go back to the drawing board. We're very interested in doing this levy because we have special circumstances in Nepal. Our community stopped growing about 15 years ago. There really has been no growth since. There's been no new business. There's been no new growth at all. And so we have to do something about that. And this council's been working very hard to do just that. We were hit face on like everybody else in the community when Topo said that, hey, we're leaving, and we're going to be gone in 14 weeks, and by the way, there are no new owners. So, is that, we're just going to stick our head in the sand and what we're going to do. So we acted on that. We've been involved in bringing to a successful conclusion on the railroad. Some people are going to be able to go back to work that have been on work for quite some time. These levies are designed specifically to broaden the amount that's paid throughout the community. The reason why we're doing it is because we're upside down. In our community, there's about 65%, actually, well, I think it's about 70%, Graham can fill me in. But we have way more residential properties than we do commercial and industrial. And so obviously commercial and industrial pay more taxes than residential. So we have this one massive cost that we have no control over. It takes up 19% of our budget. And that's policing, over $2 million a year. And that is scheduled to go up and up and up. It's never going to come down. So we have to find a way to deal with that. Flin Flon just got an enormous break. The latest census indicates that they are now under 5,000 people, so they don't have to pay the federal government for policing anymore. It's now a provincial concern. We don't have that much. Ballet in Thompson, Hudbay in Flin Flon, they provide grants in lieu of taxes. Massive, $5 million in Flin Flon, considerably more in Thompson. Those are disappearing. So we're in a much better situation in terms of our future because we have the forest, we have agriculture, co-op assisted investing in an agroplex south of town. We have healthcare professionals. We have post-secondary education. We have a lot of things that other communities in the north don't have. So we need to move forward. We need to grow. We can do nothing about it, which we've done for a long, long time, and be faced with a set of circumstances, or we can do something about it and we can grow. So there's a number of things that we can do. Of course, we could just raise taxes, right? That's the easiest way to do it. And then we have the revenue. If you don't want to pay it, then move. That's not the way to go. We could decrease our services, like pick up garbage twice a month instead of once a week. We could, not plow snow on streets, on some streets, and plow other streets. There's ways where we could cut services, but that's not the way to go on it. What we need to do is we need to broaden our tax base. So what we've done to date in that direction is that we have what some call a fire sale. We took every vacant property that the town of Bob owned and sold it off. They were generating no money of any kind. No one was interested in buying them, and so we just kept them going. So now we have 30-some odd lots that are being developed. I was just out at the lake on the weekend, I see that already 20 lots have been cleared. So that's going to create more revenue for our community. If we have more residents in our community, that's going to attract a number of new people to our community that currently don't move here. You can ask Tony Zambo up at the mill how many incredibly good people they have missed out on hiring because they couldn't find adequate housing. I know personally from UCM that there are a number of professors who did not locate here because they could not find a place to live. So what we need to do is develop, obviously, more housing. We need houses, we need duplexes, we need maybe 4 or 6 plexes, we need apartment buildings, we need all those things. If we're going to attract people to our community, we have to have a place to live. And we think we can do it. But it takes everyone's help. It's taken us years to get into the mess that we're in, and it's going to take a while to get us out. And so we can either continue to, move along at a snail's pace, or we can do something about this. And I think the answer is to do something about it. So what we're going to do, what we're looking at doing, we're not going to come right out and do it. We're listening to you first. We had an education session last night. We're having another one today. And based on the information, we got some really good feedback last night. And based on the information that we gathered from you folks, then we're going to we're going to sit down as a council and have another discussion about that. What are the pros, what are the cons? And then we would, at that point, if we're going to move forward, then we would have a public hearing. And once the public hearing has taken place, then it would be introduced as a bylaw. So you have to have first reading at a meeting. You can't have first and second at a meeting, you only have first, so then it requires another meeting after that to have a second and third meeting. What I'm trying to tell you is that this is, if we go at it really hard and fast, we're probably looking at January, February. This is a 2019 issue, not a 2018. So I want you to know that our ears are wide open. They weren't as open as they should have been in the spring when we first introduced it. We looked at $600 as the fair way to go. So someone, for example, and my Ryan, I'll just use you an example. He has a vacant piece of property, and it's not a dump. It's well maintained, it's mowed, but he's going to end up paying about $520 more for his property, for that vacant property. It's designed to get people who are sitting on vacant property or who have derelict homes that no work is being done on the homes. They're literally falling apart. You can see through the walls. Grass is gone. Weeds are this high. Trees hanging on the side. Those people are going to pay. The ones at the other end are going to see a decrease. But I think if a $100,000 home was $310 a year increase on a $100,000 property. That's basically a good. We are able to, if you so choose, when we're done here, and we need to keep it at an hour because that's what that works. But we can go over to the office over here. You can give us your street address, and we'll be able to tell you where that's going to fall on your property, what the increase or decrease might be. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're looking at. It's progressive. It's moving our community in a good direction. And the key in all of that, in my opinion, is that we need to move forward. We need to grow our community. We need to develop our community and grow it. And this is the direction that we're heading in. So with that, we're going to just let you ask any question that you want, and we will do our best to answer. Graham is our controller, and we have our counselors here, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay?
Yep, they're at the front desk this time. It was closed last time. Yep.
So the increase or decrease would be on the assessed value of your home, not the market value, correct?
Correct, the assessed value, and their kind of break-even number is $207,500. So if your home is appraised at that, then it would be like a 0, and then anything that's higher than that would see a decrease, and anything lower than that would see an increase.
And that bar is a little bit lower on the commercial side because they pay a higher proportional rate based on their assessment, so.
The mayor stated that this was to offset policing costs. Is that what your statement was?
No, what we're doing, I'm sorry. What we're doing is we're taking the cost of policing out of general revenue. It's an uncontrollable cost. We have no, we can't control a bunch of the costs that we have in our communities, but policing is the only, it's totally controllable because it is what it is. So that comes out and then it's spread out throughout their community. The churches and the schools are exempt, and then you take it from there.
Okay, well, I did a Google search, and it says that in this province of Manitoba, 30% of policing costs come from the federal government and 70% come from the provincial. So why aren't you lobbying these two groups to pay for the increase?
So there's a formula that they use that decides how much each community pays. If you have a population of under 5,000 people, the provincial government will pay 75% of the policing costs, and the municipality is responsible for the other 25%. If you have a population between 5,000 and 15,000 people, the provincial government will pay 25%, and the municipality is responsible for 75%. So again, it's a cost that we can't control. It's a formula that the federal government has come up with, and we get a bill essentially for policing costs, and we have to pay it. We have looked at what it would cost if we had our own policing services, so like almost private, like similar to Winnipeg Police or Brandon Police, and it would actually cost us more every year if we totally absorbed those costs on our own.
How much is absorbed by, how many times this summer I've seen 4 police cars racing down the highway to go to Moose Lake, all from town? How much are they paying for police services that are all run out of our department?
So if they are called outside of the community, there's a billing process that takes place. Jim?
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned earlier on about UCN hiring professors and not being able to hire them. Were they looking to rent? Were they looking to buy? Why was it that they couldn't be hired?
They were looking for a home. They were looking for a home to purchase, to live in, to be a resident of the community.
And there was nothing available for them to buy? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the homes that they're interested in looking at are there's very few of them. We're talking like the 300,000 plus, right? There's not a lot of those around.
I worked there for a long time. I know how many people they attracted here. Number of the gentlemen would have hired on here, they'd never bring their family here. Take a walk our downtown. I just got back from 2 weeks of holidays abroad and come through our town to see what we see here in town. Policing costs are driven by what's in our downtown. And the unattraction to the community is what's in our downtown. And I don't know what we can do as a town or as a council to outlaw that. They have no problem on the reserve. If somebody gets busted for something and they're barred from the reserve, why don't we bar them in town if they've been picked up for public intoxication for 5 times and bar them from town?
We can't do that.
But they can. Why can't we?
Because they're governed different. They're not governed by the same laws
Well,
and
let's
by the
change the
same
government
legislation that we are as a municipality.
Change the government then.
Is part of this problem due to the fact that, Mr. Mayor, that you panicked when Tolko Plant said that they were leaving and you gave up 3 years of commercial taxes for them?
Sure, that's a fair comment. But the last thing that I did was panic. There was an opportunity. There was a small window of opportunity that would have allowed Tolko to stay here for an extra couple of months. Give us the opportunity to try and see if we can't find a new way to go on this. And so they were unwilling to do that, but that offer would stay if we could find a buyer. But remember, they told us there are no buyers. So when a buyer appeared and had 4 conditions, there was an environmental, there was a pension issue, there was a 10% rollback in wages, and there was the municipal tax incentive. And so there were 4 pillars. If those 4 pillars were agreed to, then new ownership could take place. I don't think that we were in a position to kill that deal. Not when it's a $38 million payroll that operates this community.
Well, just some of the things that I've heard thrown around is it would have cost them $40 million in severance and to shut that mill down environmentally. We all know that Tolko wasn't going to pay $40 million. As far as I've been told, and what's been going around the mill, is they already have a buyer lined up. So is this not like the last time the mill employees took a 10% pullback, where we were played again?
No. The new owners of the mill, Canadian Craft Paper, are building 5 and 10-year plans. They've made substantial investments already in upgrading equipment. They've done enormous things. They have opportunities to grow this operation, and that's their plan. They will tell you, American, what are they called? American Industrial Acquisition Corporation will tell you that this operation here has been a tremendous success for them. They're not interested in walking away from that tremendous success. They are here to stay for a long, long time.
You're saying that they've made considerable investments. It's my knowledge that they have made 0 investments, that they're borrowing against the asset. That was the plan when they came in originally, and as far as I know, that's what they're still doing. Well, I'm sorry, but I worked there for 36 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But doesn't any business borrow against asset?
They
Isn't that a...
They made it clear when they came in, they weren't going to invest their own dollars. They were going to borrow against the asset.
Right.
So I don't know what they're telling you with their sunshine, but if you guys took the time to talk to people who worked out there, maybe you'd have a little more information.
I would just turn that around and just ask that you talk to some of the people out there too who actually are in those offices, who are operating that.
Well, if you talk to the workers, there is little or no confidence in our current management team. So, you know, there's information there, you just have to talk to the right people, I guess.
Yeah.
Just for curiosity, is that the union's position out there that you're quoting on, or is that the coffee shop opinion?
I'm not speaking for Local 1403. I'm speaking for myself, as somebody who's worked out there for a long time.
Okay, so
So don't misconstrue the fact that I'm here representing the local. I'm a member.
no, I was trying to clarify where your information and stuff would be coming from, other than, as you say, it sounds like it's from the coffee shop talk,
Talk to some of the people who work there. Talk to the tradesmen. Talk to people who supervised there for 20 years.
I have. But I haven't heard any of them say, well, they should have just let it die. And I guess that's my whole point here is sometimes you got to spend money to keep the money going and rolling over in town. Because one job lost out there is how many businesses are impacted in town because those revenues aren't available to spend. They're not going to buy goods in town.
Well, pretty soon we're not going to be able to afford to buy goods in this town, the way prices are going up everywhere.
Yeah, the operative thing there in some cases is everywhere because we're not the only community that's experiencing that. There were some points made about the condition of our community and the visual impact it places on things. And those are probably things where within existing resources, we can certainly improve on. There's always room for improvement there. If somebody's thinking of coming to town and taking a job, and so they come and visit the community and whatnot, that first impression goes a long way to their decision-making process. And if it's not a good one, then that's a problem. Part of the argument for, well, why aren't we doing all these wonderful things is, well, because the community didn't want any new taxes. That's a part of it, but that's not all of it, because the taxation dollars that the community do pay could be potentially used better to clean up those. And I think that's what's being identified by the community, is some of these things that deter people from coming here aren't the multi-million-dollar expense. They may be smaller, but they have to be moved up to the top of the list of things we need to do.
There's the thing is, I'm trying to get us back on subject a little bit, is that, you know, there's a cost to service a piece of property. You know, whether it's a half lot or a full lot or, you know, a corner store or whatever, there's a cost to service that property, right? There needs to be water, there needs to be sewer, there's snow removal, there's all kinds of things that go into servicing a piece of property. And in order for us to maintain the service level that we have, we need to broaden our tax base. In other words, we need to have more taxpayers in order to continue this route and to continue to see some growth. We, as I mentioned earlier, we basically haven't done very much in the last 15 years. This council has turned that around in the last couple of years and really worked hard towards building and growing our community. We're trying to take advantage of every situation that we can. At the same time, remain with the services that we have. And so we think that this is a good option. This is a well thought out direction to go. Is to take that cost and spread it out throughout the community. And so that's why I think it's important to realize, you know, the thought process behind where we're going. I mean, we can be. There's all kinds of, you know, I could say, well, maybe the mill won't be here, but, you know, maybe the mill will grow. Well, you know, maybe it's going to rain next year and there won't be a very good crop. Well, maybe, you know, there's you know, you have to keep moving forward. And we need to grow. I can't stress that enough. This is as a community, we need to grow. There's going to be big issues happening in Flin Flon and Thompson over the next couple of years that will allow us to take a lead role in growing the north of Manitoba. The railroad deal is just a perfect example of that. You know, like that was, everybody had that pretty much written off. And diligence prevailed, and a deal came to be. So you're going to see rail traffic that we haven't seen in a long, long time. You're going to see people going back to work that haven't been working in a long, long time. And that's called growth. There are just 2016 and 17 and 18, there was no grain hauling season. None. So, you know, for this community, that meant that there was between 30 and 40 locomotive engineers and conductors who were no longer coming here on a term basis to run these trains out. What did that cost our community? Untold many, many dollars. They all stayed in hotels. They weren't staying in hotels anymore. They all ate in restaurants. They aren't eating in restaurants anymore. They spent their paychecks here. They weren't spending their paychecks anymore. So now we can have more growth. We can continue to build and to broaden that tax base. That's the most critical thing that you need to take home with you today, is that we need to broaden our tax base. We cannot continue to be one of the highest taxed communities in the province. We just simply cannot do that any longer. We need to beat that down and take a lead. So that's why we're looking at what we're doing.
And service levies are evidence-based. They've been introduced in other communities and have been successful in seeing those communities grow. Like Flin Flon again, for example, you can see that there's less derelict properties and there's less rundown businesses, and people that were sitting on vacant or derelict properties either got rid of them to somebody who was willing to invest in them and build them up, or they put the investment in themselves because it was no longer worth it to them to just sit on that property and pay a very minuscule amount of taxes. So it's not something that, you know, we just pulled out of thin air and thought, oh, hey, let's do this. I mean, we looked at other communities across the province and looked at the success that they had in growing their communities. And one of the common factors in all of that was special service levies, that they changed the way that they did taxation. They modified taxation, and it's kind of similar to how Saskatchewan has a flat tax. Saskatchewan is booming. Like, you know, you go there and their roads are better and better maintained and their communities are growing, and it's a lot of it is because they have a flat tax where people pay, you know, a baseline amount to get the services that they get, and that's a model that, you know, I think works for them. And special services is a model that can work for Manitoba. You know, I believe that they're a good thing. You just need to find the right way to do them. There's no one cookie cutter mold that's going to work in every single community. So each community needs to look at them and figure out what works best. And, you know, for us, again, policing is one of the costs that we can't control. We literally get a bill that we have to pay. And that's, you know, Flin Flon, again, like to use them as an example, they do it for policing and their fire services. That's what their special service levy is for. And so, you know, we looked at costs that we can't control and thought that that would be a good place to start.
Jim?
You had mentioned about derelict properties here a couple of times. Do you have an idea how many derelict properties there are in the pod?
No.
Do you have a reason why they're derelict?
Pardon me?
And have you talked to the property owners as to why they're derelict?
I've
Can they
talked-
afford to pay their taxes? Can they afford to pay an extra levy? Why are they derelict, please?
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of them, and the ones that I in particular, without getting into addresses and whatnot, but these are people who just don't care. They don't care. They don't care to cut their grass. They don't care to put some new trim on their windows. They don't care to change their shingles. They just don't care. It's their property. If they want to do that, we'll come in and clean it up and put it on their taxes. But that's not changing it. What's happening is they're getting away with paying $500 or $600 a year in property taxes. It costs considerably more to service that property than that. And so the person who cuts their grass and looks after their home and maybe has a hedge shouldn't have to pay for that guy to just be a jerk. Shouldn't be. So, and if you're sitting on a vacant property and waiting for, perhaps you're doing some land speculation, I would like to suggest that over the last 10 years, there hasn't been a lot of home construction. I don't see that speculation lasting forever. You need to either develop that property or sell it off to someone who will develop it. And so, in the meantime, you'll be looking at, if you have an empty lot, a half-size empty lot, you're looking at your taxes going from about $200 a year up an additional $520. To me, that's motivation.
Has the council made the decision to change that half-lot bylaw?
So we're trying to. So it's part of our zoning bylaw, which we're working on changing right now.
So it's not changed yet? Do you expect when it will be, please?
But you can come to council and you can apply for a variation to build on a half lot. So it's not that you can't build on a half lot. Right now, our zoning bylaw doesn't allow for that, and that's a big process. So it's something that we've been working on for a while. Our administration staff has been working on for probably 6 or 8 months to try to get that changed. But I mean, again, that's a longer process. So kind of in the intermediate, in the interim, people can come in, they apply for a variation application, and council can approve that variation, and they can go ahead and build on a half lot, or you know what I mean. So the process hasn't been changed yet to make it easier and streamlined, but we do have a plan in the meantime so that people can move forward with building on half lots.
to add on to that, there is a large number of half lots that are vacant in town with very little assessment that people maybe hoarding right now because they're not paying a tax. There's no tax burden, right?
Yep.
So I'm not sure it's a question or a comment, but so we're talking about a policing levy, and I realize, as you're saying, it does cost money to bring sewage, water to a vacant lot or a derelict property, and yes, there's people that don't care anymore. I'm not sure if by making their taxes increase, whether it's going to make them care more or even less. But it seems to me like and I'm just looking at the formulas here. So the hardest hit properties are really the starter home properties, like the people who you're trying to encourage to get out of a rental situation into a starter home. Those are the people that are going to be hit the hardest. And the biggest savings, really, like if you look at the very bottom, properties from 3 million up to 13 million, like I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming those are apartment blocks and one being Canadian Craft. So there's about $500,000 of savings for that top tier. Is there not a way to make a formula? And I know you're trying to increase business, you're trying to increase commercial, so, give the bigger guys a break, which is nice. But it seems to be it's all on the backs of these poor people who can afford from $100,000 to $175,000 homes.
Great.
I made this analogy last night, and I don't think I liked it, but the tax system, there's only so many ways you can work this into the Municipal Act, right? But it works on a bit of a teeter-totter system. So the way that this is being focused here is on new development, right? So the levy encourages new commercial by giving a lower rate. It encourages new growth for residential, maybe at apartment buildings or housing. It doesn't necessarily benefit people who have existing homes. It brings the cost up. It's like, and again, with that teeter-totter effect, if you're helping one side, it has to balance out somewhere, because we don't get more tax money out of this annually. It just shifts the burden around a little bit, right? So
it's just unfortunate that it shifts it on that starter home or on the person that is trying to live as cheaply as possible. Because the reality is that when people are going for pre-approval for their mortgages, their taxes have a strong play in that, because that affects their borrowing power. The more taxes that you're paying, the less you can actually borrow for a mortgage, because it's, paying interest taxes.
So I guess the gamble here is that, the mayor had mentioned, there's two ways for us to reduce taxes to the community members at large, and that is to either cut service costs or to make that assessment base bigger all around. So you don't make that base bigger by not developing, right? That's a fact. So the only way we can bring taxes down for everybody without cutting those service costs is to see new homes develop, new apartment buildings go up, new business to come into the community. So you're right, it does cost more. It's unfortunate. That's kind of the way it's designed here. Maybe it would be a temporary thing. Ideally, it would be a temporary thing where these people see a little bit of a raise for a little while, and then it goes down for everybody, right? Maybe that levy will no longer be needed in the future. If you see a boom in commercial, you see a boom in some residential properties going up.
Carrie.
This may be putting council, I don't know, make you feel uncomfortable. I understand that we do need growth in order to increase our tax base. And Jimmy also stated that duplexes and quadruplexes are needed so that people can move to town and increase our economy. But has the town of the Paw taken into consideration where these duplexes and quadruplexes can go? The lots that were sold in the fire sale, they're in a single-family zoning. Will council turn on that zoning in order to increase tax base?
So there are a number of possibilities. When Wood Acres 2 first came to be, on the I want to be careful of my directions here. On the north side of Campbell Drive, in the Wood Acres 2 area. It was proposed at that point to be fourplexes, duplexes, apartment buildings. So in behind UCN on Centennial, there's opportunity in there for apartment buildings, multiple family. So there are opportunities, we believe, for that.
Like the snow dump, is that the area you mean, or more directly in the line?
I'm sorry?
The snow, like where the snow is dumped, like in that, is that a place?
Down closer
Or
towards that,
closer
in
to
between
UCN?
the family housing units at UCN
Oh, okay.
and the snow dump kind of thing. Yeah. So I mean, it's just, we have to do something about it. And so, you know, we've looked at a number of different angles. I want to point out a couple of things, like in terms of policing costs. The city of Thompson, much bigger community than ours, right? It's about 3 times the size. Many more policing issues than we could ever dream of. But the RCMP, their depot, is Thompson's old city hall. And Thompson rents that building to the federal government, to the RCMP. Flin Flon, same kind of situation. Their RCMP depot is located on top of the fire department. And that's a city-owned building, and so they rent that facility to the RCMP, to the federal government. In the PAW, some 20 years ago, we sold probably an incredibly valuable piece of property in our downtown area to the government so they could build an RCMP barracks, and we've been paying rent for over 20 years. And that's as backwards as you could possibly get. Our policing costs are some of the highest, not just in Manitoba, but the entire country on a per person basis. And so we're trying to find a way to ease that cost, because that's just a reality. You can't change the reality. That's the cost. And so we're trying to ease that right across the whole board, so that because in order for these places to be built, these multiple families or duplexes or whatever to be built, those that are going to come in and build those, besides the ones who are already here, these are the things that they're going to look at as factors. And if it's not attractive to them, they will not come and they will not build. And so that.
You all know that I'm opposed to this, and I'm opposed to special service levy. All the issues within the community, RCMP, identifying, bringing people in, those are all factors, and I have compassion for council trying to deal with these all, but I just really don't think that this is the solution, because it's going to hurt too many people who live here right now. I don't have industry on the top of my head to say that this is a way to bring something into the community. I don't have that. That's a hard job for council. And it's the economy, and it's the living in the north, et cetera, et cetera. But the people who are going to pay the biggest price for this are the people who live in properties under the $207,000 assessment, and including vacant lots. And in vacant lots, you're talking only about a few that are derelict. But there are a number of properties that are vacant, that are in the bush, that are not developed, etc. Those are all going to be affected too. Council is collecting a little bit of taxes off that. They're probably going to leave them for 3 years to go into tax sale. So now they're going to become municipal properties. And the concern is too, is some of the lower end properties, you're talking about people who have properties and they are what people call slumlanders or whatever, not developing, or no one lives in them. But they're the few and far between when you look at the larger scope of the people who live in these properties, try their best to upkeep them as best they can, but their incomes do not give them that ability to do so. By changing this and by adding taxes onto these people, you're going to put them into even more stress. In the March hearing, there was a few of us who got together and did up letters, etc., to go out. Of those, there was 289 objections, 38 rental properties, 80 from seniors, 151 from everybody else who lives in that range, and 14 from exempt properties, which you're not putting on anymore, and 5 from commercial. These are all people who live in properties, not the people that have vacant or derelict or et cetera, et cetera. So you got a total of 289, and I counted another 56 who put in letters, but it didn't fit the right scenario, so they couldn't be counted. So altogether, you're looking at 345 objection letters that came in. Now, this was all done in a short period of time. I think that's a good indication that people are concerned of how it's going to hurt them. Attracting new businesses, new larger residential properties, multiple family properties. The savings that they're having and the expense that they have to spend to build these properties, those little bit of savings, it's not going to have a huge impact on them, I don't think. But the extra costs, and you think that they might not be that much, $300, $400, whatever, but people on lower incomes, seniors with fixed pensions, that is big money for them. They're already dealing with all the other rising costs. People in the multiple family, and especially on the bigger end of the scale, they're going to be the ones benefiting the most. And if you're looking at, we're talking policing costs right now for this special levy, it's not on a per family basis, because those properties have multiple dwellings in them, and it's only going to affect just the roll number, not the number of units in those properties. So it's not being spread out equitable of the people who live here now. And I understand the Municipal Act. I understand that you can't take out residential, multiple family, you got to go residential. I understand that you can't take them out. So this special levy is not fair and equitable because it is not spread amongst all the people in this community now. It is only looking at roll numbers, not at per unit into those multiple family. This is not fair and equitable. It's going to hurt a lot of the people in the community. And I don't have a solution of how you reduce taxes, but the little bit of impact you're going to see at that end, I don't think is going to affect people building in the community. What is affecting people and industry coming into the community is a way bigger issue. It's economics, it's living in the north, it's the cost of transportation in the north, and it goes on and on. This special service levy is not going to change that scenario.
Yeah.
We've been doing the same thing for so many years, and we just keep going further and further down into a hole. And I don't know, the analogy I think is we just keep banging our heads against the wall and expecting things to be different, but it's not. It hasn't changed. It's getting worse. It's getting more expensive to live in our community. And it's not because of anything that we can control at this point. But if we can find a way to build up our community, it's going to lessen the burden for everybody at the end of the day. That's what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to hurt anybody. We're not trying to put this on the backs of lower income people that can't afford to make these higher property tax payments. You know, we're trying to build this community for everybody. We're trying to do it better for everybody. We're trying to make the economics work. But as of right now, they don't work. And every year, things get more expensive. Every year, infrastructure gets more expensive to fix. Every year, it gets more expensive to replace. Every year, labor costs raise. Every year, everything goes up. So we keep doing things the same way, and we keep going backwards. So we need to find a way to move forward, and this is the plan. This is our opportunity to be able to propel our community forward. So this is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to put this on the backs of lower income people. We're just trying to make this community better at the end of the day.
If I could just add to that too, Val, is that those letters, those 200 and some odd letters, this group here takes full responsibility for there being so many letters. We could not have handled that more wrong if we had tried. And so this time around, we're trying to meet with our community. This is the direction we think that we need to go. There's a tremendous amount of evidence throughout the province that these special levies, they work. Otherwise, we wouldn't be looking at it. So let's just hang on a sec, if I may.
Just one question.
Yeah.
How many years have these other communities have special service levies in place? Do you know?
Some of the-
Flin Flon has it since 2015.
Yeah.
They've had special
2015.
service levies on policing and emergency services.
And Flin Flon is, before I get on to that though, I just want to finish up that we just, boom, surprise, there's going to be a $900 special levy, please sign here. And so, we got the response we deserved. So when we went back to the drawing board, after listening to people, we came up with what we think is a direction to go. Because we need to do something. We can no longer do nothing. We have to do something. In Flin Flon is experiencing a lot of the same things that we're experiencing here. And that's that the population of the area is unchanged, but the population of the community is dropping. So, and again, I said it last night, I'll say it today. I don't begrudge anybody who wants to build a beautiful home on the lake or at Rocky Lake or have an acreage in the RM. I don't begrudge them at all. Because, they'll pay less money in taxes. Absolutely they will pay less money in taxes. But these people are the ones who are doing that, are moving from our community and moving outside of our community and continue to use our services. And so our pot, if you will, of who we can get to help pay for that continues to shrink. So we need to stop that. We need or grind it to a halt as much as we can. Encourage people, if they want to go there, that's fine. But we need to work on our community and let it grow and let it prosper. And by, as Chad had mentioned, by doing nothing, it hasn't worked. Residents are paying far more than they should in taxes because we don't have that industrial or commercial base that we need to desperately go get and operate.
In a nutshell, when I look at this, if my property is $200,000 or less, I'm going to pay more.
Correct.
But if my property is worth more, I'm going to pay less.
Right.
That, I think, is where, as a community, we're having problems balancing that out. That if I have more, we sort of would like everybody to be paying a little bit. Like, why should somebody who's got a $400,000 home get a tax break, and here my taxes are going to go up and I'm watching my pennies?
Why should a person in a $400,000 home be paying more for policing services than somebody whose home is valued at a lesser value?
But then, how many people in an apartment block?
Well, no, but I'm just saying, I'm just flipping the question. I'm just playing devil's advocate, that's all I'm doing.
It's just one or the other, there's
Yeah,
no
like
balance, it's just not,
Pull and tug.
yeah, it's just not balanced, and it just...
Well, to get one thing straight though, when you're saying you're not trying to put it all on the lower income, the lower priced, you are, because you look at how many units are affected up to 175,000 or 200,000 versus over it. There's over 1,000 units under 200,000, and there's, 200 or something over.
Like
So it is, tell the fact, it is being placed on the lower valued homes,
To
period.
build a new house, you can't build a new house for less than, if you build to the minimal specs, which is 960 square feet, you're looking at a minimum of $250,000. That's without furnishing it or anything, right? So if somebody, it goes back to what Jim said, is somebody going to want to come to the town of the Paw and build on a vacant lot here and build a $300,000 home and say pay $7,000 or $8,000 in taxes? Or are they going to want to move to Rocky Lake or to the RM and pay significantly less taxes? And if you look at other communities right across the province, our taxes are skewed. A $400,000 house here pays $10,000 in taxes. A $400,000 house in Swan River pays $5,000 in taxes. So we need to do something to level that out, to make our community attractive, because it would, to go back to what Graham said, We hope that this impact doesn't last forever. Our goal and our vision with this is that we will see more growth, so we'll have more people contributing to our tax base. Therefore, eventually, everybody will see a decrease because we have more taxpayers essentially to pull funds from to help balance our budget. But unless that happens, like, we don't really have a lot of options. Like, we've done efficiency reviews, we've cut things where we thought we could, having minimal impact to the community, but we're at the point now where we either need to reduce services or we need to increase taxes, and people are going to see an increase all around, right? Like, and that's not going to do anything to help attract new people to our community if the taxes just keep going up, because that's the only option that we have. And I mean, I wish that there was a perfect way we could do it so that we could have a little bit more of that balance, and, you know, maybe apartments, we could apply the levy to them differently, because you're right, there are multiple families who live in there, but unfortunately we're bound by the Municipal Act. There's only so many ways that we can roll out this levy, and it's either we include everybody or we exclude the commercial side, which just doesn't make sense, because then more of the burden is going to the residential taxpayers. So the commercial side would see no change or a decrease, and the residential side all across the board would see significant more increase.
Jim?
You mentioned the people who live outside the community. The people who live outside the community do in fact have to pay policing costs and all the other costs. They may not be the same amount as a town, but if you looked around your community, you'd see that those people who live, be it Rocky Lake in the RM, still own businesses and still pay taxes in the community. Margaret Commodore, your councillor, is one of them. So to say that you're going to bring more people in the community because you have another additional levy is really false. It's throwing something out that's far-fetched. You're not going to bring people in when you add another levy. That's a cost to someone to go to the bank to get financing for. People have complained for years, vocally, whether it's in a coffee shop or in council chambers, that the taxes are too high. The levy is just another version of adding a tax on top. How is that going to bring more people into the community, or even get people to start businesses? If the mayor and council would look further, you say that the levy has been going in Flin Flon since 2015. How is it a proven track record yet?
So you can see, like, from Flin Flon, like, if you go to Flin Flon, you will see the improvements being made in Flin Flon. Like, it's a slow and steady thing. It didn't happen overnight, but it's been in effect for 3 tax years now, and you can see changes when you go to Flin Flon. There's businesses that would rather go to Flin Flon than open up here because of their taxation there. They can save money. So that, yes, there are other elements like transportation costs and all of that sort of thing, but if they can save money on their taxes by being here as opposed to some of the other communities, that offsets some of their other costs, right? So, like, I don't know.
I know the mayor had mentioned last night about the tri-parties working together,
Right.
the RM, the OCN, the town. Maybe if we work together verbally in thought, as well as work together to bring large industry or bring businesses to the community, then everybody would benefit.
So we have a tax sharing agreement with the RM, which means if business opens there, we will see some benefits from that.
Yep.
And the RM has special service levies. It's the direction
Yes,
that
they do. Yep.
they've decided to go, and I think it's been successful for them.
Yep.
They've definitely faced some opposition and some resilience, or they've been, doing what they can to try to ease people's fears and show them the benefits and the positives of it. And I mean, it's worked there, right? So they've been able to broaden it and make things a little bit more equitable. So you don't have somebody paying $200 a year and somebody paying $8,000 a year for the exact same level of service.
Val?
At the end of the day, if you call 911, no matter where you live, the police are going to come to your house. They're not going to treat you any differently because your house is valued at $400,000 or because your house is valued at $150,000.
Well, that goes back to just using that one scenario, that goes back to the same thing I said before. It's not fair and equitable because each dwelling has the same RCMP service. You have multiple families in apartment blocks, and they're paying the same as the single-family dwelling on one roll number. Also, when you're looking at, speaking about the $400,000 home, yeah, I know our taxes are high, and that's another issue that is long range for.
That is the issue, Val.
But the $400,000 home, you're saying in Swan River is around 5,000, it's 8,000 here. With this special service levy, they're going to say $556. That's not significant.
But again,
So
over
the
time,
impact,
that's
the
going to
impact
go
is
down
not
even
there
more.
Okay.
to help that $400,000 home. The impact is there to hurt the $200,000, $175,000 home. That's the point. This special service levy is not going to anywhere near level off the taxes. Not for the residential end, and very limited on the commercial end. Right now, you're looking at the mill only that's going to benefit.
Yeah.
And, you know, that we need that mill, we need it to operate, but right now, I don't think that's a significant dollar amount that they're going to save. It sounds like a lot, but when you're looking at, I don't know what they have to spend in a year or what they're looking for a profit, but I don't think that amount is going to be all that significant in the whole scheme of things. But it's going to hurt the little people. Also, Flin Flon, this is a year where you're going to see how tax sale might affect some of those properties. Because now those properties are 2 years in arrear. This is a year in the fall where you might look at the impact of what a tax sale is. You're saying that in the province of Manitoba, there is approximately 50 of these across the province. Like, how many of them are better than 3 years old to see what the impact is on tax sale for either vacant lands or low-income family properties? I don't think we know those numbers yet. So I think the effect is going to be harsh on those lower-end assessments. And I don't want to see our seniors having to move out of their homes, sell their homes. And who's going to want to buy them when their taxes are going up? That's going to be difficult. It's going to hurt the little people.
So we can certainly investigate the successes of service levies around the province. In the work that we have done, and Jim, you called it, you called it false, and so you know what? Maybe you're right, and so maybe you are. So we're having these sessions yesterday and today to educate ourselves. If it's just false and it's just going to hurt those that are on fixed incomes, then I would ask, what kind of solutions have tossed around in your minds about what we can do to move our community forward, to make it grow, to bring in commercial operations. I've been working on this railroad deal far longer than I should have. Just like it should never have happened in the first place, and yet it did, and so we worked on it. So this company that has purchased this line, they're very interested in getting their product to market, and that market is over in Eastern Europe. And the most cost-effective way for them to do that is through Churchill. And so they're working hard on trying to find a commodity or a product or a merchandise of some kind that can come from Eastern Europe to Canada and come down the rail line. That's growth. That's growth. So if we just do nothing and say at some point someone's going to come and save us, we're in for a world of hurt. We need to take the reins of our own future and do something. And so this is where we're at. And this is what we wanted to share with our community, both last night and today. I say to you, in all sincerity, the process is one that is, it's going to take some time to do it. And so it came across in the spring that we were just ramming this down people's throats. I don't want anyone to think that that's the case. We have heard from a number of people in the last 24 hours, and I'm really happy about that. But I need to hear back that Okay, if this is such a horrendous thing to do, if this is the Black Knight, where's the guy on the white horse? Does someone have that solution out there for us? Would love to hear from you. And there's lots of time to come for you to come up with ideas. We have worked 3 years, I'm going to say, 3 years on this very issue. One of the first things we did after the election of 2014 was say, holy cow, we need to turn this ship around. And it's a great big ship, and it can't be turned around in a day. And so we've been working at it and working at it. We have stumbled for sure. In the spring, we stumbled for sure. We ran into things that we didn't think we were ever going to run into. The shutting down of the mill, the railway closing down. Just as much pain could be thrown at us as a community was. And so it has delayed, in my opinion, us having the opportunity to start to move forward. And we need to move forward. And if this isn't it, then fine, let us know what you think could be. But at the end of this day and every day after this day, we need to grow our community. Plain and simple. We need to grow it. Or suffer the consequences. I'm done suffering. I think it's time to move our community forward. So that's where we're at.
And one thing that I want to point out that a couple of citizens pointed out yesterday is the municipal taxes make up 50% of your tax bill. So we always seem to have a lot of people coming to us with concerns about our expenses and how we spend the tax dollars that we collect from you. But I wonder how many people in return go to the school board meetings or go to the budget hearings at the school board and ask them those same questions, because they control 50% of your tax bill as well. The tax bill itself comes from the town of the Paw, but it's broken up into 2 sections. The top section is your municipal taxes, and the bottom section is your educational taxes. So, I mean, that's another thing to think of, right? Like, our taxes as a whole, both municipally and education-wise, are some of the highest in the province, if not the highest in the province. So, I mean, I would encourage you, we've heard your feedback and your concerns loud and clear, but, you know, the school board also has an election coming up this fall. They have meetings, you know, monthly as well, and so I would encourage people to go there and express those same concerns there, because again, we control 50% of what's on your tax bill, and the school board controls the other 50%. And I'm sure not trying to throw them under the bus or anything, but that's a fact. I mean, I've been to some of their meetings. I know that they don't have the same turnout when they announce that, you know, costs are going up as we do here, or when they want to do things differently. So I would just encourage people to, again, make sure that your concerns are heard at that level there, and that things are being done to try to control or rake in some of those expenses where they can be.
Compare the cost of the Kelsey School Division with other school divisions in the province. And again, not trying to throw them on the bus, but this is a community issue, and it takes an entire community to fix it.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
I'm not sure how it works. I know Crystal had mentioned about you have to do residential, but is there no way to have a levy for the apartment blocks and that type of thing?
So we
Because
do-
I think that whole premise of, you know, you call the police, I call the police, they all come. I don't really think that works, because number one, the derelict, the vacants, do the police need to go there? Probably never. Are they going to the apartment blocks like Val brought out? Yeah, there's 20 households in the one block. So they're gonna obviously need more service than my house, my one house. But also too, another side point is that people that have rental properties, the $75,000 bracket, $100,000 assessed value bracket, $600, $500 increase, how do you get that back from your tenants? Like, people are already crying that our rent is so high here.
I can promise you that if it's a $75,000 to $100,000 piece of property, no one is going to be paying an extra $500, $600. That's not in the equation.
Well, according to this, the $75,000 would be an increase of $300.
That's not 500 or 600.
Yeah.
So the municipal act, legislates how we can impose these special service levies. So we could, as opposed to doing it per parcel, we can do it per domestic dwelling unit, which would mean that now Graham, correct me if I'm wrong, but would mean that the apartments, pay per unit, essentially, the levy. But on the flip side of that, if we go that route, then we have to pull the commercial out. So we could only impose the special service levy on the residential areas, being the homes and the duplexes and the apartment buildings, and we couldn't impose that special service levy on the commercial side. So the commercial side would see a break. They would see a bigger break, and there would be more of a burden on the lower assessed homes and the vacant lots and stuff, because they would have to carry more of that burden because the commercial side wasn't seeing it. So again, I wish that there was a perfect cookie cutter way, or we could just go to the municipal government or to the municipal board and say, this is how we want to do it because we think this is what's best for our community, but we're constrained in what we can do. So we looked at several different options. We looked at many different dollar amounts, because $600 doesn't cover the full cost of policing. Some of that needs to still be absorbed by assessment. So essentially the guy in the $400,000 house is technically still going to pay more for policing, because 60% will be covered by the $600 levy and 40% still needs to be covered by the assessment. And same goes for apartment buildings, right? So 60% is covered by that $600. 40% needs to be covered by assessment, because they are assessed higher. They're going to pay more on the assessment side of it. So to us, this just, I don't want to say fair because that, I don't necessarily think it's fair, but I think it's the most equitable. Is it the perfect scenario? No, it's not. And again, I say, I wish we could create our own formula and say, this is how we're going to roll out our special service levy, but unfortunately, that's not a reality for us. But we did look at many different options, and that was definitely one of them, but it creates a bigger burden on the lower assessed homes, and we didn't want to go that route. And that was also one of the reasons that we reduced the amount from the $900 to the $600, because then you see a bigger gap. You see the lower assessed homes paying even more and having a way higher increase, and then you see the higher homes and stuff paying more, and then same on the commercial, right? You see the small businesses and stuff that are assessed lower paying way more, and then the higher assessed businesses paying way less. So to us, it brought that gap in a little bit. And again, we hope that this isn't a forever thing, right? This is something to kind of get the ball rolling, to see some new development, to help keep people who currently live here staying in their homes or wanting to build new homes in the community and not going to the outside communities where then we're losing that tax base. And eventually we've generated more taxes and everybody would see a reduction rate across the board, right? Because we have more revenue coming in.
Mark?
You say the $600 levy is per parcel. Does that mean per lot or per building?
Per roll.
Per roll number, yeah.
Per roll number.
So for example, I know last night a big concern was Manitoba Housing. The majority of Manitoba Housing's properties would actually see an increase because of the way that they are split up on the roll numbers. So the majority of them would be assessed at less than $200,000. So they would see an increase, and they wouldn't see a decrease, and they would see more of an increase than they would see as a decrease. Yes, their apartment blocks would be assessed as one roll number, but if you look at the row housing, in Kelsey Estates and stuff like that, those are all different roll numbers. So they wouldn't all, they're not all grouped into one big lump roll number and would see this big, huge decrease. The majority of their properties would see an increase.
So if an apartment block is built on 6 or 8 lots, it's only one levy?
Depends.
It depends on the roll number, the number of roll numbers.
Most of the time, they're amalgamated, though.
Yeah.
They're amalgamated. They're
So they
set
would be
into one roll number.
They would be one roll number, but not in all instances.
Did you mention last night, if I can clarify, does the Manitoba Housing, the provincial government, do they pay this levy?
They would, yes.
Yes.
They do?
Yeah.
Yes, they
So
would.
it's on all buildings, be it provincial or federal?
The only things that are exempt would be the churches and the school, and the reason that we heard loud and clear from the community that they didn't feel that the churches should have to pay the tax, and then with schools, like, you guys are the bill footers, for lack of a better word, for both the school division and the municipal taxes, right? So we didn't feel like it would be fair if we impose that on the schools, and then essentially you would have to pay the levy twice, because the school would then have to pass it on to you guys, and so that's almost like double dipping.
Yeah,
So we exempted the schools and we exempted the churches.
And the municipal properties, which would have put more money against the budget.
Sorry, I can't hear you though.
And all the municipal properties, because that would have been huge too. They're otherwise exempt as well.
Yeah, I
So
think,
all the municipal
It has to be,
properties.
it's an all or
would have-
none, you
Yeah.
can't pick and choose.
No, I know,
Yeah.
yeah. So that,
At
like
the
you're
end-
saying, that also creates less taxation for the taxpayer. Because if the special service levy were imposed and all the municipal properties were added, well, then that's an addition to the town's budget. So, yeah, otherwise exempt does make sense. But like I says, as a whole, I don't think this is the solution. I just don't.
yep, Sally.
One of the things that you mentioned right at the beginning was that this was hopefully an incentive for people who are paying $100 taxes, that maybe they would do something with their property, whether it's upgraded or maybe put a building on it or not. Maybe you have to take another look at those lots in particular, because I know a lot of people will go, yeah, I don't cut it, town's gonna cut it, they'll just put it on my taxes. It's cheaper than if I hired someone to do it. So you're dealing with a mentality of the exception of passing the buck.
If I'm all of a sudden paying $520 a year to have someone cut my grass,
They'd
I'm
sooner
gonna
do
relook
that
at
than
that.
have to go out and look for somebody to cut that grass.
Oh, no, we build much worse than a private contractor would.
You know,
The cost to get a town employee to cut your grass is always going to be more than hiring.
yeah, they'd
somebody
sooner
else.
do that than hire Lake Shore to come and do it.
That's good, that benefits everybody then, right? Because now we build them and we get that money and
Yes, no, because a lot of times the town doesn't have the personnel to send out to cut.
That is
I'm
correct.
dealing with a back lane exactly in that. If I don't cut it, it grows, it stays. The town doesn't have the personnel. I've been up to engineering. They don't have personnel to send there to cut it and put it onto the tax person that it belongs to.
at one point we had an officer go around and doing ticketing, but that role has been hard to fill lately. So
Yep. No,
that would also be encouragement.
And my last question is we gave craft paper a 3-year exempt. What if they come back in year 4 or 5 and say, we're going to pull a pin unless we get
so
exemption
that's an
again?
interesting point. So one of the things I think it's important to do, if you're going to be offering up something like that, is to monitor that. How are you doing? How are things going? And Canadian Craft Paper is obligated to report to this council on an annual basis of how things are and what direction they're heading in. And I can assure you, unless I'm being absolutely lied to and bowled over and like a flim-flam thing, that these guys are here to stay. And one of the reasons they're here to stay is because of those 4 pillars that brought this deal together. And my friend over there who has since left sees things otherwise. I'm not the kind of person who's going to sit and look at a glass and say it's almost out of water. I'm going to look at it in a whole different angle, and I can't help him with that. I can't change his thought process on that. But I'm a believer in a stronger and better community.
Well, especially in year 4, they do contribute.
Well, they have to. They
Yeah.
will have to contribute. And I mean, again, I'm not a business person. I do know people who are in business. I don't see a business investing tens of millions of dollars. Like last year, they invested $21 million in the mill to bring things up to bring things up and to replace things that needed to be replaced and to be able to make a better paper product. This year, they've also contributed millions of dollars into upgrades and fixing things at the mill, and I don't see a business doing that if they had the intention of closing the door a year from now or 2 years from now. It's not the business savvy thing to do. I think they would have taken more the road of their predecessors where they would band-aid things as needed and not invest that kind of dollar into it.
What they will tell you is that they make a very good product. They make craft papers. And there's not a lot of places in the world that make craft paper. And all of the other places that make craft paper have access to natural gas. They don't. Their cost of production is considerably higher than the other guys, and yet they're consistently out there in sales. Their order books are full because they make a good product. And that's not going to change. I'm not an expert on CKPI, by the way, but I got to believe what they're telling me is they're not. Like I said, I'm not being lied to.
I don't disagree with you, Sally, that everything you've said and other things people said could come to pass. But if we walk into the future assuming the worst and doing the least, it will pass, is my estimation. It's going to come back and haunt us. So the way to work around it, let's assume the best. Now, KPI, if it can't get the qualified people it needs to move to this community and buy a home here and live here and whatnot, then what are they going to do? They're going to have, that creates financial hardships for them and effects going forward. So how we prepare this community to support and service businesses is really important. We have to prepare ourselves for that. Now, this plan has upfront initial hardships on all segments in the bottom end. Interestingly, in the residential part, it's 78% of the residential will see some form of increase from $22 to $527, depending on where you sit. The middle of that, the $300 to $100 range is where the bulk of that group is. So it's not going to have a long-term negative impact necessarily, because the belief is that if we get these properties that are vacant now or underutilized or underdeveloped, then they can't take advantage of this. You want to get into a lower tax bracket, invest in your property. Increase its value. This impact will change on you, on the calculation. It's still $600 though. That's $50 a month. That's a 2 for or 3 packs of cigarettes. For some in that group, it will be a hardship, and we recognize that. But when you look at the intent of the plan, which is to see reinvestment in our communities, because it's costing you as taxpayers money to run the water and sewer beside those vacant, unused lots. We're not gaining any revenue on that because it's not happening. So, and we can't just pass a law and force owners to do it. We think it's a good idea, but it doesn't happen that way. But what we can do is redistribute costs to impact those across the board equally.
Just before you go, Val, I'm just going to say I got to go to work. So you can talk with these.
Just one comment is that 6-pack or whatever, I don't like that analogy. I'm looking at the people where it's milk or bread or clothing or whatever else. There's the majority of the people living in these lower homes aren't doing 6-packs, and I just don't like that analogy. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, folks? Thank you, Jim, for coming both times. That's good.
Thank you.
On Beth. And Trent and Brian.